Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for not-so-serious weird news, TV and movie reviews, and some paranormal shenanigans. We'll also take dives into what's going on in pop culture. You can follow us on Twitter at creepin_it, on Facebook at facebook.com/creepinitrealshow, and you can also shoot us an email at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show. I am one of your hosts, Yardley, live and direct from Atlanta, Georgia. And today we are running as a swinging duo, Christy and I. Moni is not here, but she's definitely going to be here in spirit. So, Christy, how are you doing up in North Atlanta?
I'm doing well. I've come a little caught off guard because I'm used to always being the last one to be talked to. So I was just, even with her not here, I was still kind of zoned out. I'm doing very well. I just got home from South Carolina. I have been traveling nonstop for work, but have been able to fit in some good shows. So I'm super excited to talk about everything we've been watching.
You know what? That's what's up. And once again, I know that Moni's going to have some great stories when we do get an opportunity to get her back on. So, but this week we are going to talk about Midnight Mass. It's a show that premiered on Netflix a couple of weeks ago. It's directed by Mike Flanagan. I think he's also one of the writers on the show. And we all know Mike Flanagan from The Haunting of Bly Manor and The Haunting of Hill House. And in my opinion, The Haunting of Hill House, as far as a series, a horror series is concerned, I thought that it was pretty perfect. But then when we swing to The Haunting of Bly Manor, I thought that was just okay. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was okay.
Yeah.
And Midnight Mass, for me in a nutshell, I thought that it was all right and it got good towards the end. You know what I mean? And by saying good, all of the monologues that you had to, go through, they all did pay off. So it's kind of a slow grind, but we'll talk a little bit more about that when we, dive a little bit deeper. We will be talking about things in a spoilery way, but I will not be, going through as usual, breaking down and, in a summary of everything that went on. I kind of want to leave something up to the listeners who haven't seen it yet, but, I'm really excited to get your opinion on this. But first, Christy, you want to talk about the giveaway?
Yeah, just one more opportunity to win a free copy of Quiet Place 2 with extra scenes. And all you have to do is go and leave us a good review on our Apple iTunes account. Super easy, and we're giving away 3. So that's a lot of opportunities to win. Very easy to do, and we really want you guys to have this movie for Halloween. So hopefully we can announce the winner next week. And we are also giving 2 away on Facebook. So and all you have to do there is just like our Facebook page and tag somebody that you would want to watch the movie with. So that's 5 opportunities to win this movie. And then we will also be giving away digital copies of Old after this giveaway. We've been approved to give away Old by M. Night Shyamalan, which I watched, which we'll be talking about at the end of the show because I watched it. And, so that's going on there. And listen, you guys, I'm paying for shipping. All you got to do is leave a nice review for us, and boom, you are entered to win this movie. So that's it. That's all I got to say.
And you know what? It's pretty good because that movie, it's better than I thought it was going to be.
It was really good. I liked it as much as the first one. I was very surprised. I always have a bad attitude about part 2s. But this movie was set up perfectly for a part 2 because they explained a lot of the beginning, which I really felt was lacking in the first movie. So I enjoyed it. Yes.
Well, you know what? We can go ahead and dive a little bit into Midnight Mass, and then we'll move on to what we're watching. And I got a question for you. Did you know that Katie Siegel was Mike Flanagan's wife? Because I didn't know that until like a couple of weeks ago when I was doing the show notes, and now it makes sense how she's in all of his movies.
It's making a lot of sense, yes.
But you know what? Hey, keep it in the family, and it's not she, it's not like she's she's a bad actress. I mean,
She's
hell,
good. Yeah, no,
you know what I
she's
mean?
great. Yeah,
She's totally solid. So,
very pretty. Mm-hmm.
and that's definitely it's definitely a plus when, you can employ your family, but a lot of the other people that you have in your cast, they're at least consistent, with the performance based off of the script that they're given. So, I think that that's kind of solid. So in a nutshell, Midnight Mass is a story of faith and the thought or blessing of eternal life that's brought on by the blood of an ancient vampire to the Catholic community of Crockett Island. Midnight Mass has 7 episodes, and if you're talking about the significance of the number 7 in the Bible, it appears 732 times. And also 7 is the number of completeness and perfection, which is both physical and spiritual, and pretty much derives its meaning from being tied directly to God's creation of all things. So I thought that was kind of clever that they broke the episodes down, not necessarily in episode or chapters. It's in books. So the first episode of Midnight Mass, book 1, is called Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible. The name derives from the opening words in the beginning. And Genesis basically narrates the primeval history of the world, and the patriarchal history of the Israelite people. Book 2 is called Psalms. And the book of Psalms is an intricately designed collection of sort of like poetry, which, recounts the history of Israel and God's covenant promises. The third book of Midnight Mass is called Proverbs, which is an example of the biblical wisdom in literature and kind of raises the questions of values and focuses on moral behavior, like the meaning of life, the right conduct, and, the fear of God. And our 5th book of Midnight Mass is based off of Lamentations. The book of Lamentations expresses humiliation, suffering, despair, basically despair of Jerusalem and the people following the destruction of the city by the Babylonians. And book 5 is Gospels. And when you talk about a gospel, I guess in general, it means like a Christian message for the most part. And book 6, the Act of the Apostles. And if you think about during the life and ministry of Jesus in the first century, the apostles obviously were the closest followers. And, for the most part, they just became the teachers, of the message of Jesus. And book 7, which is Revelation, which is the final book of the New Testament where everything off the chain and I
shit gets real.
and all of those things happen. So the way that they titled these episodes, Christy, and they broke it down, into 7 episodes and the significance of that in the Bible. And when you look at these different books and the definitions of those things, when you look into it, it pretty much describes what goes on in every episode. You know what I mean? It's pretty much, right.
Clever way to tie in the story and compare it to like the Bible. It was clever for sure.
It was very clever. And this is, in Midnight Mass this is something that Flanagan had been working on for quite a while. And I did not know until I was reading other articles where he was doing, when he was giving interviews about this, he grew up Catholic, and it was devout. So I think one of the things that made this work, and I'm not Catholic, but I think that when you experience something, you can kind of pour a little bit more into it. And
right.
I think that he did that. And there are some great interviews that are out there, Creepers, like Entertainment Weekly. It has a Midnight Mass Ending Explained article that has Mike Flanagan in it. And also in, Bloody Disgusting has something linked, where they basically posted Mike Flanagan's essay when he was talking about, his inspiration and, why he did it and all of that. Those are some very interesting reads. And I'm pretty sure if you listen to this podcast, you probably know what Bloody.
Yeah. It's a great website. So question, because I, for some reason, and I think it's just because when you see series like this that are, that work this way, I always assume they were from a book, but this one is not from a book. It's just from him. Like he wrote it, or do you know?
Yeah, I guess it was just his baby. It's not necessarily, I don't think that it's from a book. I mean, based off of what he's talking about, this is something that he's been thinking about probably for the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years or something like that.
Oh,
Right.
wow. That's cool.
And, you know, he just, I thought that, I know that there are a lot of people, there are a few different type of people who, like when they watch movies or TV shows, like you've got people who just want to, no matter if it's a foreign film, they want to hear a dub, you know, in their language because they ain't got time for all that, you know what I'm saying, reading at the bottom.
Yeah.
Or you have, and it's kind of the same way when it comes to very talky films. This is a very monologue heavy, series, and I don't mind it. You know, I don't mind it because I appreciated it more towards the end of the series because I had a more well-rounded view of each of these characters that they pushed to the forefront, like what they were what they were going through, what they were battling with, how were the things that they were going through used against them a little bit later, you know what I mean, in the movie. Right. I thought that it worked. Now, if they didn't stick the landing at the end or the penultimate episode was terrible, I would have been pissed off because I was like, I did all this, you know what I mean? But around the middle of the series, once you start introducing the vampire element that kind of comes out of, I don't want to say it comes out of nowhere, but I just wasn't expecting like that angle, but I understood why they, you know, introduced the vampire. So right. I guess, you know, at first I kind of wanted to just dig into the characters, but I will briefly just give a few, you know, a couple of little keynote pieces on each of these episodes. So basically in the first episode, we're introduced to Riley Flynn. He was a venture capitalist and he returns home to Crockett Island, which is a fishing village, which is off the coast of Washington State. He did 4 years in prison for a drunk driving crash that killed a woman. He lost his faith while he was incarcerated. He's trying to get reintegrated back into this devout Catholic community, which I know is can be hard, but he's one of those people that did a bad thing, but he was a fortunate person because when he gets out, he has a caring mother and father. I mean, that's one of the things that, you know, he definitely had at his advantage. You know, he has like a little knucklehead, you know, teen, you know, little brother, you know what I mean? And obviously there's a familiarity with the people in the town that you grew up in. Now, as you know, you can come home and trying to get your life right, but obviously there's still going to be people in the community who are probably going to be, you know, talking about you and what you did. You know what I'm saying?
Totally, especially in a small town. Definitely, yeah.
But like, Christy, the one thing that I didn't see in this, even though you know that that's the type of things that happen, that wasn't even something that they were necessarily even focusing on at all in this. Like, I don't, you know, there are certain people who brought up what happened, but they were people who cared about, you know, this character Riley. Right. So it was never really brought up in a way where people were like really dissing him over what happened. But Riley is one of those characters that when you get into this, you're like, it's obvious that this cat's the main character. You know what I mean? And
right.
I think that everybody was used pretty evenly, which is a hard thing to do. You know what I mean?
Yes. And their backstories were really good, well played too. Like, I really enjoyed, usually I'm kind of like, when I start a series, I'm like, yeah, whatever, let's get on with the action. Yes. And I didn't feel that way. You know, it was like interesting. It was interesting to see the dynamics with the townspeople and learning who is who and who hates who and where the struggles are and all of that. And I didn't feel like there was that need to get on with the meat of the story.
Absolutely. So I think one of the another early characters after Riley, you know, comes back, you know, he meets his parents and he's trying to, you know, just get back into the swing of things of being home. We're introduced to Erin Green, who's played by Kate Siegel. She was a childhood sweetheart of Riley's, and I think they said that she was out in California, wasn't she? And she got pregnant. Yeah. And she ended up coming back as a single mother. She's pregnant when we're introduced to her. I guess pretty pregnant. I think she was like, 7 months pregnant or something.
I don't know if she was that big, but yeah, she was definitely pregnant. But yeah, you could tell it was noticeable for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we meet her and she's pregnant and she's basically back in the mix. She's a school teacher at the same school that her mother, was the previous teacher to. So she came back and she's like, look, I'm coming back. I didn't like that life or whatever. I'm doing my thing. She's got a job and she meets Riley. And from the beginning, we can kind of see her kind of, just kind of fishing for something. Cause you could tell that, like, even though she's trying to figure things out and Riley are trying to figure things, I think the way that her character came across where she was yearning to be able to figure some things out with someone, and Riley was kind of an easy target because I don't want to say he's an easy target, but when you look at his situation and her situation, he would definitely be somebody who she could probably mold into what she, you know what I mean? I don't even know if I'm describing it right, but it just seems like he was basically a hunk of clay.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right for the picking for a woman who's looking for a good relationship. She knows, from the past that they've got the chemistry, and then he's right out of prison with nothing going on. She's back in town. Boom.
Yep. And so I thought that was kind of a cool thing because you could kind of see her fishing and him trying to figure it out. And he was just kind of, I think with him and the way that he was feeling and not really knowing what he's going to do next, because that was one of the things about Riley's character is purpose. And he kept saying that he didn't feel like he had any purpose once he came out. Right. And like I said, and that's an opportunity. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I was rooting for him to get together. Like,
absolutely. She's pregnant. She, they clearly have feelings for each other, and he was looking for purpose. And you could tell as the stories progressed that he was kind of finding that with her. And hey, as long as he's, look, he was in a bad place. He hit somebody drunk and killed them. And probably, like you were saying, the townsfolk didn't really bring up too much of it. He served his time, and that's all you can do. You can serve your time and try to move on. But unfortunately, there's just not a lot of forgiveness when you get out of prison as far as work and trying to move on with a life. So he had that opportunity, and I'm glad, he took it.
Yeah, and a little bit of backstory on Crockett Island. One of the things that we learned about Crockett Island is that it was this island was affected by an oil spill, and it pretty much devastated their primary source of income, which is fishing. And apparently part of that included over time, the church, and we'll kind of get to some of those characters. A person, her name is Bev, and she's like, one of those, she's a very overbearing member of St. Patrick's Church, and she's really influential in the community. Well, there's been some beef between Bev's character and other people who live on Crockett Island because one of them, namely the town drunk, basically accuses her of trying to convince the residents of the island to take a settlement from the oil company because she knew that the money would in some way kind of trickle back to the church. You know what I'm saying? So at least we know that they're normal because, you always got people beefing with people and then having their opinions on why certain things happen. But, that's kind of the backstory of why Crockett Island is kind of in the, kind of in the dumps when we're,
struggling. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that have either left or it's, the people that are there are struggling. And yeah, there's a lot going on.
So, in this first episode, we end up seeing obviously Riley and Katie and Riley's parents. We're introduced to the teenage brother, and pretty much towards the end of the episode, we see his brother. What is his name? Oh my God. I lost his name. Remember. I guess his name, I think his name might have been Warren, but Riley's brother and some friends, they were like right there on the shore of the beach, doing what young kids do, having some beers, and they were out there smoking some pot. And, obviously it's night and things are looking spooky, and they are on the part of the island that's known to have a ton of feral cats. So as viewers, we're looking at them smoking and drinking, and in the background in these bushes, you see all these little eyes that are just, that are literally growing. Now, I can tell you right now, Chrissy, there's an to that. Even if I know that they're cats, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just how these eyes, it's like, nah, like we're not even, I wouldn't even be like at all with all of that crap going on. But we see all of these things going on, and they see the cats, and they're poo-pooing it off like, oh, it's just a cat. You know what I'm saying? Don't worry about it. And then Riley's brother sees a figure, and it literally looks like a shadow, but it has the same eyes. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. As what they were thinking, were cats. And then they're like, oh man, you didn't really see anything, whatever. So nothing happens to the kids, even though you're thinking something's obviously about to happen. And we kind of, it goes to the next scene, which for the most part is just the next morning. And when we're reintroduced to that part of the beach the next morning, there are like, would you say dozens or like 100 cats? It just looked like they were all along the shoreline.
Oh, it could have been, I would say upwards of 100 cats just laying dead on the shore.
And just, they're just mauled with big gashes, that are out their neck. And nobody can really figure out what the hell, is going on. Why are all these cats here? And, we're also introduced in this scene to Sheriff Hassan. He is a Muslim sheriff, and he's in this extremely Catholic community, and whenever he worships, if he wants to worship in a masjid, he has to, take the ferry back in to inland to be able to do it. But for the most part, he just practices his faith on the island, and being the sheriff, he does occasionally attend some of the Catholic services. He sits in the back, he doesn't participate, but this is when we're introduced to like the other in the story. Right. Which is Sheriff Hassan, who is actually, he's got a face that I'm like, I recognize from somewhere, but you just can't figure where. But Sheriff Hassan also has a son, and, I don't think that we were going to really touch on this too much, but at some point in this series, the son starts being, interested in Christianity.
Yeah.
And, obviously I don't want to say that it created a conflict, but it kind of created a concern for him as for the sheriff, as a Muslim parent. And you just kind of see your kid, basically, growing up and making their own decisions. I would have to say, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And, I think also because you see some of the people in the community that are Catholic kind of shitting on him and his religion. So that's got to be a really difficult situation for a parent, for their kid to come to them and say they're interested in going to this church this Catholic church, when it's these people that have been inadvertently making him feel uncomfortable being there as a Muslim. So I can just imagine how difficult that's got to be.
Oh, absolutely. And this will give us a great opportunity to kind of dive into two of the main Catholic characters at this church. So one of them is like this zealous woman. Her name is Bev Keene. There's a Bev Keene probably in every congregation in America. There is Father Paul Hill, who we're also introduced to in this first episode. And Father Paul Hill, he's a newcomer, and he's replacing their aging priest. His name was Monsignor Pruitt. And, basically Father Paul Hill is the person who's informing the parishioners of what's going on with Monsignor Pruitt. He's like the only person who has, all of the, all of the information. So I would have to say that, Riley, Aaron Green, Bev, and I guess for the most part, Father Paul Hill are probably the main characters, in this story. So, the guy who plays Father Paul Hill, what did you think about his performance? I mean, he is played by, Gosh, my show notes are very terrible. Here. I am totally okay. Well, we'll come back to this. The guy who plays Father Paul Hill, and once I find his name, I'll bring it back up. And I feel like
I'm looking for it on IMDb.
Yeah, and I can't see
Can you not find it?
Yeah, that's pretty weird. Yeah, but you know what? We'll fix that post. But anyway, the guy.
Hamish Linklater.
Okay.
Hamish Linklater. I've never heard of him.
Yeah, but what did you think about his just performance overall in the show? Did you think it was solid, or did it pick up for you a little bit more as, in the later episodes? Like, how did you? I didn't know what to think.
It was really good. I thought, I think what I really liked is I knew he was the key to what the weird shenanigans going on, but I didn't know for a long time that this was a vampire story. And he did good with keeping you guessing for a while, several episodes. You don't know what I thought maybe he had killed the other. I didn't know what was going on. And so I can't say that he lacked anything to me. I think he did very well playing the story over, keeping you guessing. And he's really eccentric, and he's, I think, different than the old priest that was there. Very different, which is ironic, but which we'll find out later.
But the same, yeah.
And it was just, and I mean, of course, you find out later what his motives were at the end. But yeah, I felt like I thought he did a great job, and I felt like he was really eccentric and strange. And so you knew something was going on, but you just didn't know what the hell it was. And I thought he did a great job.
I would definitely have to agree with it. You just have to say that he was basically, kind of sane. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and spoil it. So essentially, Father Paul Hill is Monsignor Pruitt. As we mentioned, earlier in the episode, that this is a vampire story. So essentially, Monsignor Pruitt ended up going to Israel, and he was diagnosed with dementia. So while he was in Israel, he ended up wandering off into the desert. And I mean, to probably certain death. There was a sandstorm that was going on. And, with his dementia being in advanced stages, he ended up wandering and finding a cave, an ancient cave that was out in the desert. And obviously, if you're in a sandstorm, dementia or not, you are going to try to get, you're going to try to get out of it. Mm-hmm. And essentially, when he goes into this cave, he ends up encountering this ancient vampire, which attacks him. It bites him in the neck. He's lying on the ground dying. And this is what I thought was kind of interesting, because I've never seen this with anybody's interpretation of what they think a vampire would be like, where a vampire in this world, it could bite you on the neck and you could bleed out, and obviously you're going to bleed out and die. Mm-hmm. But in order to change you into a vampire, it literally has to cut itself and pour the blood down your throat. You have to ingest the blood, kind of like, in the Catholic thing where you get the bread and, you drink the blood of, communion, right? Yeah. Right. Like in communion, where you have to drink the blood and, blood of Christ and all, what it represents. But these vampires, they have to actually make you ingest their blood for you to be able to come back to life, to turn. And I thought that was cool, because you're not just making rando vampires by going around biting people. You have to deliberately feed them your blood, like in communion, for them to come back. And I thought that was kind of cool. Have you ever seen that in any other vampire movies before, Christine?
I have, but I can't remember which ones. I know I've seen it before, so yes, but you're right. A lot of them, it's literally you just get bit and you turn into a vampire.
Because what I was thinking is anything that was familiar. Like, I have seen a vampire movie where a person had cut their wrist and fed it to another vampire because they were hungry, but it wasn't necessarily to turn them, you know what I mean, to bring them back. But, in a nutshell, Monsignor Pruitt Father Paul Hill is Monsignor Pruitt, because basically once the vampire makes him ingest the blood, it de-ages Monsignor Pruitt. So when he emerges from the cave, he's young, and he is the Father Paul Hill that we know throughout this story. Right. And apparently, and I don't know how the hell he pulled that off, but apparently when he came back to the United States, he packed up a vampire and
You're bringing this bad boy home.
Yeah, absolutely. Like in this big,
you find out why later, but yeah, at the beginning, when you really find out what's going on, you're like, why the hell did you bring him back with you?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And how the hell do you pull it off in TSA America? Like, I know the TSA don't have their hands on everything, but I would pay money that they would figure out there's a damn vampire.
No vampire smelling dogs in the airport? What?
Hey, listen, and it's not even like the cool vampires that we're used to where anybody could be a vampire and you don't know. Like this thing is like totally bat wings. It just looks horrendous.
Goblin face. Yeah. It wasn't a pretty vampire, like interview with a vampire.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much from this point on in the story, and I think the revelation about Monsignor Pruitt being Father Paul Hill, this happens in about the third episode. You kind of learn about this, but basically what Father Paul Hill and Bev were doing is this vampire, during their communions, they were taking some of the vampire blood and they were adding it to the wine, during communion. And one of the things that the parishioners see, throughout this series is like you have things that are perceived to be miracles. There's a young lady who was paralyzed, and in one of the episodes, Father Paul Hill, he's really giving this very hardcore, sermon at church. And then he tells this young lady, like, hey, I know you've been paralyzed. You need to stand up, and come to me. And everybody in the congregation is like, what is this? Some cruel joke? She can't walk. She's paralyzed. And then, of course, she gets up out of the wheelchair and walks towards, Father Hill. And this is one of the things that starts basically lathering up and buttering up the congregation to, building up their faith and them believing in it, which is going to it's going to soften up what's going to happen to them. You know what I'm saying? In the seventh episode.
Another person is the doctor, that's the town doctor, who can't wait to get the fuck out of there. She's gay and is only there for her mother because her mother's ill and has Alzheimer's or dementia. I mean, I think they're intertwinable when you get to a certain age. And the father has been going out of his way to still see her, even though she can't come to church. She's too ill, and give her communion. And you're kind of like, what a guy, And then you find out he's just trying to get her well. He wants her well again. And there was nothing weirder than at the end of the show when she's calling her daughter and looks younger than her daughter. It was bizarre because her daughter wasn't doing she didn't believe in religion. She doesn't believe in communion. So she, of course, wasn't doing the communion. Well, the blood was in the communion. So she's looking younger than it was such a cool way it was just hilarious to see her going, honey and daughter and blah, blah, blah. And she looks way younger than her daughter. And her daughter's looking at her like, oh my God,
Oh yeah, totally freaked out. And those two characters, it's Dr. Sarah Gunning and her mother was Mildred Gunning. And Mildred Gunning, as Christy had mentioned, she had Alzheimer's as well, but as some of the miracles from the spiked communion wine, she starts to reverse age as well. Just like the young lady who was in the wheelchair, she can walk now. Then you've got Riley's parents, his mother, she was going blind. She had very bad eyes, and then all of a sudden, she's knitting and she realizes she doesn't need her eyes. And then her husband, he had very, from fishing. I mean, we all know people, the type of people who take showers after work, the people who really are out there getting after it, saying a lot of times doing physical, physical work. I know that being a fisherman is not some punk job. Like you really, you know what I'm saying?
It's a lot of work. Yes.
It's a whole lot of work. And, Riley's father had hurt his back, and that's been one of his deals over the years, is that he's had back problems and he can't go, the way that he used to. So, it would be, before Riley went to prison, it would be like, the little teenage brother that they have was a person that was kind of helping him to fish. And you know how teenagers are. He totally didn't want to grow up to be a fisherman, but his dad, he loves his dad. So he's helping his dad, you know what I'm saying, do his thing, but his back problems go away. So throughout the congregation, you have different people who have all of these ailments, and their correlation of why they're getting better is, Father Paul Hill showed up, and then the things that he's preaching is this, that, and the other, and people are starting to get better. And, just kind of really lathering up everybody for what's to come. And I really thought that was cool, because there's a lot of interactions, and I know that we're really glossing over this kind of fast, but there's a lot of interactions with a lot of the characters, like the young lady who was in the wheelchair. The reason why she was in the wheelchair is she was shot in the back by the town drunk, who was the person that I mentioned earlier didn't like the church because he felt like that they were grifting off of the settlement money. So like every character in this had a reason. So in different episodes, like some of these episodes, you could say that the theme was like trying to forgive people, to a certain extent. This other episode is about, this or that, but it all comes back together really nicely. But to kind of speed ahead a little bit, there were some scenes in this that I won't forget, because you have a character like Riley who has his different interactions with Father Hill. And one of the reasons why, as a term of your probation, especially if you've got a DUI, you obviously know you're going to have to go to AA meetings.
Right.
And one of the ways that Father Paul Hill was kind of able to, he had a special interest in Riley. Come to find out, he wanted to basically have him as part of like the vampire crew to kind of get him on board. Riley, which is so stupid. That's the one thing that I have to say. I was pissed off at Riley, because you walked by Aaron's house just because the preacher told you a little white lie. Like, I'm like, dude, you could have been in there by the fireplace with somebody who likes you. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Somebody and you're like gonna charge right past her house just because the father like told this little, white lie or whatever. But, the scene with him and Aaron, when he was trying to prove to her that he was bitten by a vampire, and what we had just mentioned was he passed by her house because the father had told a lie. And when he went to confront the father about telling that lie, he saw the vampire and them like, getting the blood and put it in the communal wine. Then obviously once the vampire is discovered, the vampire kills Riley, and turns him and all this type of stuff. But I think that the scene between Riley and Aaron, when he's trying to prove to her like, hey, all of this crazy stuff is going on, and the only way you're going to believe me is basically for me to commit suicide in front of you.
Right.
out on this boat. Now, I don't know if it's suicide, because to be honest with you, like if you were a vampire, I could understand somebody being like, yo, I don't want none of that.
You don't want that. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't want that. I'm saying that, but I'd be like, maybe I could hang out for a few hundred more years and then give up. But, but that's one of the things that he had to prove to her. And I thought that was one of the dopest scenes.
It was amazing. Yeah.
It was amazing.
Can you imagine? Holy shit. Somebody burning up in front of you? I would have been like, what the fuck?
I wouldn't have been as what the fuck about them burning up in front of me as me being like, what the fuck with them burning up in front of me in a wooden boat while I'm in the middle of the ocean. Like, I was like, how that boat did not, I guess it's just some type of,
Right. Well, sure. Because because the guy was on fire. I mean, I'm guessing, and tell me if I'm right. He took her out on the boat so he couldn't back out. You think? Like, he took her all the way out there so he couldn't change his mind last minute. Do you think that's why he did that?
Oh, that's absolutely why he did it. And he said it. It was just the part where I'm like, dude, you didn't think it through. Like, what if you burn through this boat?
Boat?
know what I'm saying? Your pregnant, your childhood sweetheart drowns. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Well,
like,
she's not pregnant anymore. So that's part we didn't talk about in the story is she starts going to church and taking the communion, and her baby disappears, like
oh,
literally gone.
but it happened after that scene though.
It did?
She didn't find out until after that. I don't think, did I? Or am I tripping?
I think it was before. I think it was before that.
Well, because I think the reason that they were given for that is that the blood of the vampire, which has the ability to make you age in reverse, it basically healed everything, including it getting rid of the baby,
Yep.
which I thought that was a pretty cool twist. But am I missing something? Was the reason why it healed her because she had a miscarriage and it went away, or it just took her back so far? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, what did they?
The doctor thought it was something like that to become a vampire, which the baby would have had to have become a vampire as well. You have to die and come back. And I think the doctor said something like she guessed that the baby just didn't have the strength to do that, to go through that process. And then it died, and then the body just like got rid, like completely it just got rid of it. That seemed like what she was alluding to when they were talking about it, because she went to the mainland to get tests because she realized the baby was gone from the island doctor, and they basically thought she was crazy. They were trying to get her to go see a mental health professional because they're like, you have never been pregnant. And she's like, I have been though. And they thought she was nuts. So then she, of course, went back to the island to the only doctor who knew, or not the only, but the doctor who had seen her pregnant, who had also then seen it magically gone. And that's when they were starting to realize some weird shit's going on. And that's when Riley, that night or the day after, is when he burned up in front of her.
Yeah,
so yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes, that definitely, you're bringing back a few memories. Well, excuse me. So basically, in a nutshell, we see all of these different miracles, and the miracles are because of the vampire blood, being mixed with the communal wine. As the series goes on, basically towards the end, there's kind of like almost a literal come to Jesus moment where basically the vampire shows up in the pews, and Father Hill is basically saying, and by example, because some of the things that we're leaving out is there were different parts of this show where Father Hill had, did he drink, he had drank that poison that Bev had, which she was like scattering around the beach to ward off predators, which was the reason why they were thinking that those cats died. But
Right.
there are different scenes in this show where people died or were killed, whether it was by accident or not. And because of what happened to them with the wine, it gave them an opportunity to come back. So in essence, Father Hill had drank the poison. He died and came back. And some of the parishioners of the church happened to see him come back. So that was another way that he was kind of setting everybody up, because you have some parishioners who can go back and say, hey, I literally saw, a miracle, you know what I'm saying, with the Father.
Right.
And, so they played all of that up. So at the end, basically the 7th episode, where they have like would you say it's like a Jim Jones type, everybody's drinking.
Totally Jim Jones. Yeah.
So, everybody drinks poison and people start coming back. Obviously there are some people who are frightened who don't. A lot of people turn into vampires. There's like a massacre that's in there, and everybody who turned and came back to life, some of them didn't even remember what they had done. They literally wake up and it's all of this carnage, and they're like, oh my God, what happened? I think I killed my mother, or I think I killed my daughter, which I thought was kind of, that would have to be the worst.
Up. Yes.
And I thought that it was like, I thought that was really cool how at that moment you saw who had the faith and who didn't. And some of the people who didn't weren't granted the blessing of eternal life because they didn't necessarily turn everyone, but you really did get a good indication about a lot of the characters like Bev, who I mean, she was totally made for everybody not to like, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
You know what I mean? What did you feel about her, Chrissy? Like,
and that she reminded me of a character in the movie The Mist by Stephen King, the one at the grocery store with the lady who she ends up kind of turning the whole mist situation into a biblical event, and then they start getting violent and excusing really bad behaviors for Jesus, and she reminded me a lot of that character. And she's the character you hate. She's the character that can justify anything for Jesus, which of course is hypocritical, and you start to just see the irony and the hypocrisy of her just literally looking the other way about everything as long as it fits her narrative,
Absolutely. And I think that her demise in it was the most satisfying because, as you said, you could tell when the end was nigh that she wasn't as, what was that song? Everybody want to see God, but nobody want to die. That whole type of thing. You know what I mean? And you could really see that she wasn't as devout. Well, at the end of the day, she didn't want to go through the process of being dead. Yeah, you know what I mean? And she she didn't have the resolve that I think that she thought that she had when the end was near. But I thought that the ending was very cool. And like I said, one of the reasons why I didn't want to do a point by point summary is there's so much stuff that I think that the listeners just need to see and be surprised about in it. But
all the different stories and how they intertwine, and then how it all comes together at the end. And then it literally just becomes a literal dumpster fire. And, the ones that don't want to be a vampire, but have worked out that this is what's going on, are seeing the writing on the wall that if they leave this island, this, so much could happen. So they're they're putting together plans, and they're trying to figure things out. And you really are watching it and thinking, these people don't have a chance in hell. You know what I mean? But it was such a clever way they did it. And wow, I'll let you continue, but it's really, really is worth a watch. I really did enjoy the show very much.
Well, when you look at the overall plan, because I think the plan was for them to eventually, obviously go inland, and they were basically going to start the kingdom of heaven the way that they want to by unleashing, more vampires and things out there. But I did find it interesting. The only thing that I would say that I was kind of confused about is that everybody, we don't necessarily know how vampire lore works in this world because nobody mentioned the word. I don't think nobody ever mentioned the word vampire or anything like that, right? So, I know that some of the people who came back in the church and turned before, daybreak, happened, all of those people shouldn't have known that they were going to die when the sun came up, though. Because all of them didn't know, but it just seemed like and I'm like, dude, I don't know about y'all, but even though the ending was beautiful, I think to the characters who knew what was going to happen, their endings worked a lot better for me. But all those other people, I'm like, most of them shouldn't have even known, you know what I mean? Anyway, it was just, I know that's kind of some nitpicky stuff.
Even the ones that knew that the sun would kill them, they're just burning. They're like, we're just going to burn everything to keep people from being able to hide. Yeah. So we can kill them or, eat them or turn them, except for their place. They didn't even give themselves another option, which was incredibly stupid and short-sighted.
But remember, it was the kids and the other people who burned it down, so everybody else couldn't do it. So
they started it, but they finished it, but the other people started it. Remember, because one of the guys was they're burning stuff down, and the girl goes, let them burn it down, and we have our place, so who cares? And it was like, really, like, you're just gonna give yourself that one option, and you're fine with them burning and shit? Like, that was crazy.
It was so dumb, and you can't convince me that there is nowhere that you couldn't get up under some shit, because I would have found somewhere, Christy.
I would have gone underground. I would have dug a hole. You can't die, so I would have dug a hole. But I think, like, they saw shit going off the rails with their leader, and I think that just kind of threw them into, like, this despair spiral, and so they were like, what am I even doing? You know?
I think that, but also the whole thing, because, you know, we all know that there's uncertainty. Like, you know, like, death is just, like they say, it's the great unknown. You know what I mean? And to those who want to believe that there's something else, most people are going to try to hold on to that. But there's a lot of people who are like, you know, hey, I just, you know, I don't know. You know, you're thinking about everything that you did in your life and all of these different things. I do think that there probably should have been a little bit more chaos. Like, because I can tell you right now, if me, you, and Moni are out there on that beach and that sun comes up and I see Moni turn into ashes, I ain't gonna sit there, you know, I'm gonna be like, come on, let's hold each other, Christy, and take this like some chance. I'm gonna be like, did you see, I see Moni's, like, you know, all of her feelings on the ground. I'm hauling ass. Like, I'm trying to get the fuck up out of there. But it was a very poignant ending for me. I just thought that the way that, you know, some of the characters, cause everybody, think about it, Sheriff Hassan was probably the truest and the person who made out the best. And cause he didn't deviate from his faith. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't like a vampire or anything. I think that the way that he went out and the way that his son was there, I think that was probably like one of the most touching moments.
Oh, totally. His son saved him. Well, kind of saved him from becoming a vampire. And it was a great comeback for him, since he wanted he wanted his son to leave the church when they started drinking the vampire blood, and his son was the first one to drink it. And
you're like, dude,
no, yeah. And so definitely,
that's one of those things where, Christy, you know, you just got to listen to your parents, like that.
Right. I was thinking back, I'm like, my kids would have done that too.
But it was one of those things where it was like, his father was fighting hard for him to kind of stay more devout, in the Muslim faith. And he was also saying, like, hey, you know, if you're trying to figure things out, as much as he wanted him to stay within Islam. And granted, I think with Islam, you know, if you're born into it, it's just like a whole lot of things, you know, hey, if you're born into it, that's what you are to certain people, you know what I mean? But, I think his father, I understand now how his father was pushing him to take his time with his beliefs, because it's like, his son really went in whole hog, like, on it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Towards the end, you're like, wow, I'm kind of surprised that you, that you really went hard. Cause just like you were saying, like, it really takes a lot for a young man or a teenager to not only go against your parents, but to go against your parents in such a public way, which is against your faith and all of that stuff, and how he, how he did it. And it has to be heartbreaking, obviously, you know, for the father. And the other thing is, now, as much as I like Chef Hassan, he's a punk ass, because I don't care who you are. If you're the sheriff anywhere and all you've got is like a revolver and 7 bullets on an island, you're the police for the whole island. That's the one thing I could not get over, Christy. I am like, nah, bruh. Like, you are a fucking moron. Even, like, you know, the people who were in the show were like, dude, like, you don't have a gun? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's going on? That did irk me. And I also feel like, don't get me wrong, a couple of those bullets came to good use a little bit later.
Right, definitely.
But I'm like, why did y'all have to dumb down? I mean, you would get the same result if he had a shotgun and, you know what I'm saying, and a double stack magazine. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to be like, this ain't Mayberry. You know what I'm saying? You're on an island with people. But anyway, I thought that his story, the way that it closed out, I thought that Riley's story closed out well. Erin Green and how her story closed out, I will say this, I was kind of uncomfortable with, and I'm not going to spoil what it is, but the way that our last minutes with her and the vampire, that kind of weirded me out with the whole, because they tried to.
Smart.
Well, no, because it almost was like, it was a thing where when she was doing her thing, cutting up the vampire wings, all that, I think that's smart, but the way that they shot that scene, it was supposed to be in a way cruel, in another way kind of sensual, because she wasn't look, I don't care who you are. If something's biting in your neck, you're not going to be sitting there looking like you got like an afterglow after like busting a nut or something. Like they were making it look kind of weird.
Yeah.
Weird to me.
It was kind of sensual, but I was like, when they're eating like that, I guess, because you could see like when they're eating, they're just kind of like out of their mind. They're not really, they're just so focused on the eating that they're not thinking about anything else. And then she's like, hey, while you're sitting here, let's just cut the shit out of you so you can't fly that well, which I thought was very clever.
But here's the thing. We don't know if the vampire didn't make it to the mainland. Like, we don't know that.
Nobody know. Yeah, we have no idea. We saw him struggling, but we don't know what happened after that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like one of those things where, we might see the vampire again. I mean, I'm choosing to believe if we didn't see it burn up, then that thing got away. Like it somewhere. But overall, I would say out of 5, I would probably give this, I would give it a 3. I would give it a 3.75. And but I would give the ending, like the last episode, I would definitely give the last episode like a 4 or a 4.25, because I thought that the ending was really solid. It was everything that I wanted. You had blood, you had the touching moments, you had you had people who kind of accepted their fate, except Bev. I think Bev had the most satisfying demise, so I have to say, because she was just, you really got to find out that she was totally full of shit with her beliefs and how she was acting.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I give it a 4. I thought it was an amazing concept, and I'm kind of played out with vampires, but it didn't bother me when I found out this is a vampire, story. I thought it was clever. I thought I liked the aspect of the religion mixed in, and I loved everybody's backstory and how it all played out. And you can see the priest starting to kind of fall and justify, like when he killed the homeless guy. And it was basically like he didn't feel bad. And that, I think, is what Riley, why he killed himself, is because the preacher or the priest is basically saying he killed somebody and he didn't feel bad. Well, Riley knows he killed somebody and he's living with this horrible feeling forever. He didn't want to become that. He didn't want to become somebody that actually kills somebody and doesn't feel anything and doesn't feel bad. Yeah. So it was a great story. I loved all the main characters. I loved the doctor. You find out the doctor is the priest's daughter, secret daughter. And he was trying to save her mother because he loves her. And that's the whole reason why which he didn't need to bring the fucking thing over. He could have done it himself. So I'm like, why did you bring this thing over? It made no sense to bring that over. But anyway, I thought it was a great story, great concept, wonderful actors. I really did enjoy it. I could probably watch it again.
I think one of the reasons was for him to prove that, hey, here is the angel, so to speak. And it's so funny because, in our minds, people have certain ways that they want to think up,
exactly.
It's all pristine and looking nice in their polyester robes or whatever.
Right.
I thought that him promoting this vampire, especially as gruesome as it looked, and people bought it. Now, here's my thing. I can buy a lot of stuff, Christy, but once I see that beast in the pews, I'm kind of rethinking.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine. No, I don't need a demon angel on earth, and I definitely am not going to be drinking its blood. That's for sure.
So, and you know what? And actually, the vampire. Do you remember that those movie series was called like Leprechaun? You remember those
Oh
little
yeah. Mm-hmm.
the way that vampire's face looked? It reminded me of the design of like that friggin' Leprechaun's face. But
Really
anyway.
did. Yep.
But first, you know what? I definitely would recommend this as a watch. And if you like Mike Flanagan's work, I'm pretty sure that you'll enjoy this. I know that I did. The second half, like I said, was better for me only because that's when everything was going downhill. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
I definitely think it's worth a watch because there's way worse stuff that's on there, that you can find on all of these streaming
Definitely.
services. But since we are, talking about other stuff that's on streaming services, let's just talk about a few of the things that we've watched and we'll just close this thing out. And hopefully our next show will be back in the saddle because we've all been, oh my gosh, it's kind of hard to get back into this podcast thing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so for me, recently there was a show that's on Netflix. It's called Altered Carbon. I didn't like the live action version of that, but just recently they dropped Altered Carbon Resleeved on Netflix, and it's animated, and it's good. Like I really love the animation. I love the story. It works, and it's about an hour and I don't know, maybe like an hour and 20 minutes. I would recommend that you watch it, Chrissy, because it's actually pretty.
Really? Okay.
Cool. But it's about the character called Takashi Kovacs. He's protecting a young tattoo artist while investigating the death of a Yakuza boss on this planet called Vladimir. So it's a very unique story about Yakuza kind of secession and someone kind of cheating at it so that they can stay in power. But there's other little things that are in it as well. Like in this world, nobody dies because they basically have like a chip in their neck that kind of uploads your consciousness. So as long, like your body can get destroyed, but as long as that chip survives, it could be implanted, into another body. And like you could, and obviously if you're rich and you've got money, you've probably got a bunch of bodies that you could use. You know what I mean? Like it's like a class thing as well, but everybody does. Nobody really dies. Even if you're poor, as long as those chips are intact, you can always bring that person back at some point, which I thought was a cool concept. And spoiler, that's one of the reasons why the Yakuza secession wasn't working, but it's definitely worth a watch, y'all. I actually sat through it. Like I was fighting going to sleep so I could finish it. You know what I'm saying? Because I really enjoyed the action sequences, and anybody who has animated or drawn, I know some people might say this sucks and that sucks, or this is good and that's good. People put in a lot of hard work, and you can kind of see it in what they did with this. So I recommend that. I also watched it's called There's Someone in My House, and it dropped on Netflix. I guess it was like last week as well.
I saw that one. I didn't watch it, but I saw it. I was curious about it.
Yeah, it's about a character named Makani Young, and she's a transfer student from Hawaii, and she ends up finding herself in the center of all of these murder cases in her newly acquainted town of Osborne, Nebraska. It has a lot of, I guess, teen horror. I think it was rated R though, or I think it was rated R. If some of the kills in this is great. So if you like kind of like, I don't want to say teenage horror to make people think that it's like some PG-13 stuff. Like it's got some real gruesome stuff in it. Mm-hmm. You might not like all of the characters, but there will be someone who you can kind of latch on to and like support. But I would say give it a chance because it definitely has some pretty decent, kills in it, and it's not horrible. You know what I'm saying? So I would say check it out. It's like a kind of like a middle of the pack, horror. And then, we talked about it, Sex Life on Netflix.
So Yardley told me to watch this series. I'm curious to find out why he wanted me to watch it, but I did watch it. So now Yardley and I get to talk about it.
Yeah, I just wanted you to watch it because I know that you were probably talking to the TV and just like knowing. I know, did anybody watch it with you, or it was just you?
No, it was just me. It was just me. I have recommended it to a few people though.
Yeah, so it's basically it's a woman's daring sexual past kind of collides with her married with kids present, and when the bad boy ex-boyfriend that she can't stop fantasizing about ends up coming back, into the town and into her life, so to speak. But one of the reasons why I was like, it was just a continuous self-inflicted, I would say.
Yes, yes,
Uh, uh,
yes.
you know
No,
what I'm
I
saying?
completely
Yeah.
agree with you on that. Look, I have been with somebody for 20 years, and we had a little break in there for a couple of years, but for the most part, and I had a really crazy single life. Like, I lived in downtown Dallas. I was dating famous athletes and actors, and was the belle of the ball in Dallas, traveling, had a crazy job, and of course, when you get married and you settle down and you have kids, that shit's going to come back up because you're looking at what you're doing now and going, how the hell did I get here? But you don't dive head first into it. And you certainly don't. I felt so bad for her husband. He's a good guy. There's no real bad guys in this story, you know?
Yeah, you're right. But wouldn't you say, here's the thing, they tried, at least for me, unsuccessfully, even though it made the story a little more juicy. I think when they were in the process of writing this, they tried their best to make her husband the heel in some kind of way. Like,
Yeah,
'cause basically him doing what he did gave her a pass to do the shit that she already wanted to do and that she was
right.
going to do, like, regardless. But, yeah, but you're right. Like, cause like, dude gave her every layup not to fuck it up. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? I was just like,
totally.
and then you have to say, you're like, look, I get it. Good sex is hard to come by, right? But for you to be doing damage to yourself.
And your kids, like, listen, you chose this guy. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And you have kids. You have a newborn. Like, look, I completely felt for her because I've been there, especially I had postpartum depression. Like, it's difficult. It's a difficult process. Your life has changed. Your life becomes taking care of your family. And she gave up her career, very similar to what I did. And I had to claw and scrape to get it back because I decided this ain't for me. Staying home business, not for me. I need my own life. So you go and you get your own life. You don't go fuck your ex, or you fuck around with your ex or flirt with the idea of fucking with your ex and ruin your marriage. It was, you're right. I was frustrated with her, especially the very last episode. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I thought we
Well,
got somewhere.
yeah,
What the
yeah.
hell happened?
Exactly. And now you're like, well, the husband, do what the hell you want because you can't win. But here's my thing. You want me to tell you when I just was like dying, I was floored.
No, tell me.
When her relationship with her best friend, when the fact that her ex would like leave the phone on so that she could see certain stuff and,
Yeah.
the ex, when her best friend was smashing this guy that she's
Yes.
obsessed with, and then she just started masturbating like with the baby,
Yes.
with like the baby like right in the next room. She's like, I was like, this mother is off the chain. No, but I knew, but when that happened, I was like, okay, I got to finish watching the series. Cause like, if things get worse, if things get more out of control and unpredictable like this, but I actually, I love hated it. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I was like, I like it cause like they're stringing me along only because, you know what I mean? They're putting these characters in interesting situations. But then, to be honest with you, though, there was a few times where I'm like, I don't even know if I want to watch it if it's just going to be the same thing over and over and over. But
Exactly. I really liked her best friend's character. I thought
oh,
she was cool and funny, quirky. And she was doing it the right, like, she didn't settle down. When she wasn't ready. This chick went into head full long into a rebound and ended up married with 2 kids and then having regrets 8 years later. Like, yeah, you went a little too fast because you were hurt. Like, I get it, which it happens. But again, like, I think back, like, I just think back, like when I was at her stage of family life and stuff. And of course, everybody's got the opportunity to go kick it with an ex again. At what cost? Like that just drove me crazy. But I did keep watching it and I enjoyed the show. I just kept going, what the fuck are you doing? Like, seriously.
Yeah. I mean, everything, once again, everything was self-inflicted, but you're like, even having said that, everybody has that whole thing, how you're feeling some kind of way about your life and you're getting older and all of that stuff. Like, a lot of people get that, but I'm just saying, like, basically whatever obsession that you would have, it was turned up to 1,000 with her. But anyway.
That's exactly it. Like I really related to her through the entire show. Like I've been there. I've felt that. I have lived this crazy ass fucking life and then ended up because I just needed it. I needed to have the structure and I wanted to, settle down but I couldn't do it myself. So it was like I, met somebody and fell in love with somebody that anchored me better. But of course, when you completely lose yourself to children and your whole life revolves around your kids and you love them more than life. But that doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make the changing that you go through. It's drastic and it's crazy and it's hard. So I completely really felt for her and understood exactly what she was going through. Yeah. But she just did it all wrong. Like her husband would literally do anything to make her happy. He's gorgeous. He's successful. He loves her and was doing anything he could to make her happy. And she just couldn't let this other fucker go. And it was just like making me nuts.
Hey, I do believe that you can have your cake and eat it too. But that's basically what this whole thing is. It's just her trying to have the cake and eat it too. But the ingenious way about this is written is like for a person like you, your mother, you have kids and you understand it a lot from that perspective. It's written in a way to where people who don't have kids have been in, could be in some of these scenarios and, things. So it's one of those things that isn't necessarily escapable for other people because there's so much stuff that you can identify in this, but then there's so much stuff, just like you were saying, like you have to roll your eyes, like for real, like you, cause that guy, like when you're first watching the show and the guy who she's obsessing over, you're like, okay, this guy's a very cool guy. And I understand he was a musician and, he's got the physique and he's got the schlong from friggin', you know what I'm saying?
Oh God.
So you've got all of that, all of that stuff going on. But as the show went on, he became way more annoying to me sometimes than even she did because you're like, because as you start looking at these people, it's like, oh God, like this cat, he's just he's way more annoying than some of the other people who are.
First of all, he proposed to her. Like, first of all, he didn't even want kids. Like, she got pregnant when they were together and he was an ass and didn't want kids. He's fucked up. He's not like the greatest role model, the greatest guy. And he's trying to take her from her kid's daddy who wanted, who loves her and her kids. Like, really? You think you're going to be a good stepdaddy? Give me a fucking break. Like, no. There is nothing worse than that. You think it's like, it would have been difficult for him being a dad in general, but he's just going to become a overnight perfect stepdad? Hell no. Like, it was just irritating the shit out of me that they were missing this huge hole in that this guy couldn't father these kids. There's no fucking way. He's not built that way. He's clearly completely selfish and only wants what he wants because he can't have it,
Oh yeah. Like basically like Sarah Shahi, who plays Billy, who's the main character in this, that Mike Vogel plays Cooper Connolly, which is, Sarah it's Billy's husband, and then Adam Damos. I've never seen him before. I think I've seen the Mike Vogel guy in a few things, but he plays the character Brad, who she is obsessing over, and Margaret Odette, who Christy mentioned was her best friend, played Sasha Snow. So I think that all all of these people kind of kill their parts, but just like you're saying, it also is a note is no matter how perfect you think somebody's life, there's always, some issues that are going on, that you may or may not look at. But I have to say, the one time that I really was against Cooper was when they went to that swingers party with their neighbor. And I'm like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me? And even though I can't blame the Brad character, because, you really can't, but then it pissed me off that he had all that negative energy towards his friend, when any other guy, as irrational as we could be, we would have been trying to beat Brad's ass.
Exactly. And I felt for him. I felt for the husband because, what went through his head right before he gave her the green light was all of these images that he has of her with this ex. And I think he was wanting to put an image in her head. He's thinking, I'm going to put this image in her head to erase those up. You know what I mean? Like, this is a freaky thing that she can have a memory of me about, instead of having all this freaky memories about the ex. So I feel like he was trying to be something that he thought that her ex was, but that wasn't it. I mean, he missed the mark. It was a missed mark. And so, and of course it definitely benefited him for sure. But yeah, it was a cool, I'd heard a lot about it and I just hadn't pulled the trigger. So I'm glad.
For me, and then we're just going to move on to what you've been watching.
Right.
And I think we've all, I know we've all watched Squid Games, because I'm looking at the notes and I know that's what Moni
I haven't watched it.
wanted to. So we'll just wait for her to come and then we'll talk about that. But here's the whole thing. But here's the other thing. The thing that I know that makes you cringe and the thing that pisses you off was the goddamn journal, the diary.
Oh, totally.
How in the hell do you have that shit and just have your computer unlocked? You don't have you don't just how do you do that? Like, you're just so crazy. But anyway, it's annoyingly good, this show. So I would say
it was good.
Sex Life on Netflix. Hey, and just tell us what you've been watching. We'll wrap this thing up. I mean, it's been fun, but we definitely got to get Moni's opinion on Squid Game before we talk about it.
Totally. I haven't seen Squid Game yet, so definitely. Okay, so I watched Old by M. Night Shyamalan. It is a 5.8 on IMDb. I was torn by this movie. A vacationing family discovers that the secluded beach where they're relaxing for a few hours is somehow causing them to age rapidly, reducing their entire lives into a single day. I didn't like the beginning of it, and it was kind of cheesy.
Was it slow, or
it seemed, I don't know how to explain it, generic. I don't know. The setup seemed super generic. I don't know why. It wasn't really pulling me. By the time when they got on the beach and things started happening, you're just kind of, I don't know how to explain it. There's a lot going on. So you're kind of going from this super generic start to then really crazy shit starts going on and popping everywhere. The ending I liked because it almost reminded me of Cabin in the Woods. I don't know if you know offhand which movie I'm talking about. But
yeah.
It isn't all what it kind of seems. There's some interesting things happening in the background that kind of reveal themselves, which I thought was kind of clever. But we could have gone. It's watchable. It definitely is a 5.8. It's not fantastic.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's not bad. It's just it's watchable. And I have a soft spot for M. Night Shyamalan. I think he's lost his way a little bit recently. But I really, really love his old movies. And so I'm just waiting and hoping that he's going to redeem himself. This wasn't a redeemer. It wasn't shit, but it definitely isn't redeeming him either. It's worth a watch, but of course, he plays one tiny little part.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Just like he usually does. But it's watchable. Just don't have the high expectation because it's M. Night Shyamalan, which some people won't. Some people hate him. So, I mean, they'll be done. Then, okay, so I thought I had already seen the movie The Hunt because there's 2 movies called The Hunt. One of them takes place in Australia and I had seen that one. So when I saw this movie was released, I'm oh, I already saw this one, but I didn't. This is a different movie called The Hunt, and it has 6.5 on IMDb. 12 strangers wake up in a clearing. They don't know where they are or how they got there. They don't know they've been chosen for a very specific purpose. It was good. It was clever. It's worth a watch.
Is this the one that had the woman who was in Glow in it?
What's Glow? I don't know what Glow
Oh,
is.
the Netflix series about the women wrestlers that had Bree.
Betty
Well,
Gilpin or whatever.
yeah, her. Is this the one with her in it?
I don't know.
The one who played the Patriot. Okay. Anyway, this is the one that came out.
It's got Betty Gilpin.
Okay. Yeah. Then that's it.
And Hilary Swank.
She is.
And Emma Roberts. But it was good. It was a good movie.
I'll watch it just because she's in it. She's like, I really liked her in Glow. So.
Okay. Yeah, it was good. It is what it is. It's clearly it's they're being hunted. Like you'll see why. There's other things happening, and it's different than the other one. They're both good though. If you ever want to watch, I think the other one's called The Hunt as well. So, and I just wanted to throw out a few podcasts that I've been watching that I've really been enjoying. I've bbeen traveling nonstop recently, and so I've been going through a lot of books and a lot of podcasts. This is my standby, Southern Fried True Crime is an amazing podcast. I love her. Erica Kelly, I think is the lady's name. And she talks like this, and she's a very Southern voice, and she tells the stories, and she's just great. I love her. She's a great storyteller. I'm also listening to this history podcast called You're Dead to Me. And it's based out of the UK, and it has a historian and a comedian. And it's really funny how they tell these stories about real history events. And then I listened to Lost Hills, and that is a true crime podcast about the shootings that were happening in San Diego, and one person ended up dying in a San Diego state park, and just all the cover-ups that the police did, like because it's such a big tourist town. It's not San Diego. I'm sorry. It's in LA. And it's a really interesting story. And I just started this podcast called Shit Town, and I think it's called S Town when you look it up. And it's a story about, backwoods Alabama. And this reporter from like the New York Times thinks he's coming to investigate a murder, and all this shit happens and it gets crazy. And I've just gotten to the part where it's really starting to get crazy. So, and this is a true story, and it's really good. So that's it. I just wanted to mention some of the podcasts I've been enjoying. If you listen to our podcast, I'm assuming you listen to others. So I'm always looking for recommendations. So I like to share the ones that I recommend.
Hey, same here. And I'm going to have to check some of those out. But, gosh, I can't wait. I can't wait to get Moni on, because I know that Moni's probably seen Sex Life too. Like I'm pretty sure she has, and if not, we've got to convert her. But
definitely.
But I can't wait to get her back in the fold. But as always, it's always fun, when you and I kind of team up, and I kind of feel like I'm getting my sea legs back, you know what I'm saying? Because it's been so long that, everybody's been doing their thing. So it'll be really fun, because I think the next show isn't the next show. Yeah, it's on you. So, there is, we need to bring back weird news, because so many shit shows and murders and stuff have happened since we've been doing that. It's like, it's almost, well, obviously, you can just turn on the channel and get horror stories, around here and whatnot.
Exactly.
But there have been some good, weird news stuff. So maybe next week when you do your show, I'm going to pull a couple of stories that I've saved, and we'll kind of talk about those as well. And, did you have anything in mind, or are you going to let the force move you, when the time?
I'm working on a show. I don't know if it's going to be ready by the next recording, of bringing a girl on the show whose sister's missing and is presumed dead. And is speaking of things that the police are botching and covering up. It appears to be that they know who did it, but not a lot of movements happening. So she's trying. I reached out to her when everybody was looking at the what was the girl that just was found?
Gabby or something.
Gabby's when Gabby's things were blowing up. And it's true. Like, something happens where one person's story blows up and it gets crazy, but in the back room, there's thousands of people missing, dead, unsolved, unsolved cases. And those people deserve as much spotlight as they can get too. So I'd like to start bringing some people on just to talk about their stories and talk about, unsolved cases. And this is one of them. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to be ready by next week, but if not, maybe we can just do an entire weird news segment. So,
well, and actually, I think I saw something today on the Gabby thing. I think they were saying that the coroner was saying that she was strangled to death.
Yes.
Did you see that? Yeah.
I did. So, Gabby Petit, that's what her name is. Yeah. Yeah. So and she had been dead for at least 3 to 4 weeks, they said. So, shit's not looking good for the old dude, wherever the fuck he is.
Oh, well, I think my timeline of all of that stuff, because I guess the whole thing, so it's been a few weeks since they've been, well, at least a couple of weeks since they've been looking for the guy, right? Her boyfriend, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So they were saying that, okay, so she must have died. Yeah, you know what? We'll talk about it later. I'm like, well, she must have, you know what I mean? But yeah, so, I look forward, so whatever it is you put together, I definitely look forward to it. And, it's been fun as always. And, I'm just kind of excited that the season's starting to change, even though we're probably not, we're like another month and a half, too, before it actually gets cold.
Yeah. I'm hoping it might get a little colder earlier this time. I'm ready.
Oh, for real? I didn't think, I thought you liked the flip flops and the summer dresses and shit.
I like it, but then I'm always ready for the cold. Like, I'm always ready for each season, and I get it. And this is my favorite time of the year. I love Christmas and Halloween and all of that.
So that means you have all of these clothes you're ready to bust out on everybody and costumes. You sound like excited to go in the closet.
Yeah, costumes, yes, but my quarantine fat ass can't fit into her old fall clothes, so she's gonna have to either figure something out or get back on the Peloton or buy some new clothes.
But you already know that this ain't the season for that. This is the season for adding and not subtracting.
Exactly.
But it is what it is.
A little too late. All right. Well, thanks for Yardley for putting this one together.
Hey, no worries. And everybody, we look forward to doing our next show and Creep It Real.